The Galactic Council had seen many things in its 10,000 years of existence. They had witnessed the rise and fall of empires that spanned entire star clusters. They had watched as species evolved from simple creatures into beings of pure energy. They had even observed the birth of new stars and the death of old ones. But nothing in all their long history had prepared them for what they witnessed when the Vrekari made the mistake of targeting Earth's children. Ambassador Krell of the Veloci hegemony stood before the gathered representatives of 47 species. His gray skin had turned pale, and his 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession as he tried to find the words to describe what he had seen. "They called it a crusade," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The humans called their response a crusade." The chamber fell silent. The word translated poorly into most languages, but the meaning was clear enough. A holy war, a righteous fury given physical form. It had begun 3 standard months earlier. The Vrekari were a species known throughout the galaxy for their practice of harvesting young from other races. They used the children for labor in their deep mines, for medical experiments, and for purposes too dark to speak of in polite company. Many species had lost their young to the Vrekari raids, but none had ever successfully challenged them. The Vrekari fleet was vast, their warriors numerous, and their cruelty without limit. When they first discovered humanity, they saw an easy target. Earth was a small world on the outer edge of the galaxy. The humans had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their military was primitive by galactic standards. Their population was soft, having known peace for only 2 generations since their last great war among themselves. The Vrekari sent their harvest ships to Earth without warning. They struck 12 cities across 6 continents in a single coordinated attack. Schools, playgrounds, hospitals, and homes were targeted. In one terrible hour, they took over 15,000 human children. The youngest was only 3 months old. The oldest was 17. And then they made their fatal mistake. They sent a message to Earth's governments, demanding tribute in exchange for the safe return of the children. They wanted resources, they wanted technology, and they wanted more young humans to be delivered to collection points. The humans did not respond with negotiation. They did not respond with fear. They did not respond with the careful diplomacy that other species had tried before them. They responded with something the galaxy had never seen. Within 24 hours of the attack, every nation on Earth had declared war on the Vrekari Dominion. Countries that had been enemies for centuries stood together. Languages that had never shared words before now spoke as one. Religious leaders who had disagreed on everything agreed on this one thing: the children must be brought home, and those who took them must pay. General Sarah Chen stood in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her were the military leaders of every major nation on Earth. Russian admirals stood beside American generals. Chinese strategists worked alongside Indian commanders. British, French, German, Brazilian, Nigerian, Japanese, and dozens of others filled the room. For the first time in human history, there was only one flag on the wall. It was simple, a blue circle on a white background. Earth. United. "We have located their fleet," said Colonel Viktor Petrov, pointing to the holographic display. "They are holding position in the Kuiper Belt, just past Neptune's orbit. Our probes have identified the ship where our children are being held." "How soon can we reach them?" asked General Chen. "With our current technology, 3 weeks minimum." Chen shook her head. "That is too long. Every hour those children spend with those monsters is an hour too many." A young engineer named James Okonkwo stepped forward. He was only 28 years old, but his mind was sharper than anyone in the room. "I have been working on something," he said. "A theoretical drive system that could get us there in 3 days, but it has never been tested and the risks are extreme." "What are the risks?" Chen asked. "There is a 40% chance that any ship using this drive will be torn apart by the forces involved." The room fell silent. 40%. Almost half of anyone who volunteered would die before they even reached the battle. General Chen looked around the room at the faces of the men and women gathered there. She saw fear, yes, but she also saw something else. Something harder, something older than civilization itself. "Who will volunteer?" she asked. Every hand in the room went up. In the end, they had to turn people away. Millions volunteered for the rescue mission. Soldiers who had served their time and retired came out of their homes to fight again. Young people who had never held a weapon before demanded to be trained. Elderly veterans who could barely walk offered to pilot ships on one-way missions if it meant saving even one child. The message was simple: we are coming for our children. Heaven help anyone who stands in our way. The Vrekari intercepted the communications and laughed. They had seen this before. Other species had made threats. Other species had sent fleets. All had failed. The Vrekari were masters of war. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. These primitive humans would be no different. They were very wrong. The first wave of human ships launched from Earth orbited exactly 72 hours after the attack. 107 vessels carrying 50,000 warriors. James Okonkwo's experimental drive worked better than expected. Only 12 ships were lost in the jump. The survivors emerged in the Kuiper Belt with weapons hot and vengeance in their hearts. The Vrekari were not prepared for what they faced. They had fought many species before. They had fought species with better technology, larger fleets, and more warriors. But they had never fought a species that simply did not care about dying. The human ships did not form defensive formations. They did not try to outmaneuver their enemies. They did not follow any tactical doctrine the Vrekari had ever seen. They simply charged straight at the enemy fleet with every weapon firing. "What are they doing?" screamed Vrekari Commander Thax as he watched the human ships tear through his formation. "This is insane. They are throwing their lives away." His tactical officer did not answer. He was too busy watching as a human ship, heavily damaged and on fire, deliberately rammed into a Vrekari cruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that consumed everything within 1,000 kilometers. "They are not trying to win," the tactical officer said finally. "They are trying to reach the prison ship. They do not care how many of them die, as long as some of them reach the children." Commander Thax felt something he had never felt before in all his years of conquest: fear. The humans had a word for what they were doing. They called it sacrifice, and they were willing to sacrifice everything for their young ones. Back on Earth, the churches, mosques, temples, and synagogues were full. People who had not prayed in years fell to their knees. People who had never believed in anything greater than themselves now called out to whatever power might be listening. In a small town in Kansas, an old woman named Martha Jenkins sat in her church holding a candle. Her great-granddaughter Emma was on that Vrekari ship. Emma was 8 years old and loved horses and chocolate ice cream, and had just learned to ride a bicycle without training wheels. Martha had lived through 3 wars. She had buried 2 husbands and 1 child. She had seen more sorrow than any person should see in a single lifetime, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Please," she whispered to the cross on the wall, "please bring them home." Across the world, billions of voices whispered the same prayer in 1,000 different languages, and somewhere, something heard them. The Galactic Council had old records, older than their current civilization. Records that spoke of a force in the universe that responded to the collective will of a species, a force that could be called upon in times of desperate need. The humans were about to discover that these records were not myths. Captain Maria Santos was the commander of the assault ship Righteous Fury. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair and calm brown eyes. Before the attack, she had been retired, spending her days teaching history at a community college in New Mexico. Now she was leading the final push toward the Vrekari prison ship. Her vessel was damaged. Half her crew was dead. Her weapons were nearly spent, but she could see the prison ship now, looming ahead like a great metal beast. "All hands," she said into the ship's communication system. "This is the captain. We are going to board that ship. We are going to find our children, and we are going to bring them home. I will not lie to you. Many of us will not survive this. But every parent on Earth is watching us. Every grandparent, every aunt and uncle and neighbor and teacher who ever held a child's hand or wiped away a child's tears. They are all counting on us." She paused, her voice cracking slightly. "Those monsters thought they could take our bobbies and we would just accept it. They thought we would negotiate. They thought we would beg. They were wrong. We do not negotiate with those who harm children. We do not beg. We destroy." The crew cheered. It was not a sound of joy, but of grim determination. "Prepare to board," Captain Santos ordered, "and may God have mercy on their souls because we will not." The righteous fury crashed through the prison ship's outer hull like a fist through glass. The Vrekari guards on the prison ship had been told that humans were primitive and weak. They had been told that humans feared death. They had been told that humans would be easy to control. The first human through the breach was a sergeant named Michael Kim. He was 43 years old and had 3 children of his own. His daughter was among those taken. He killed 17 Vrekari before they managed to bring him down. And even as he fell, his last bullet found the head of an 18th enemy. Behind him came more humans. They did not stop. They did not hesitate. They stepped over the bodies of their fallen comrades and kept fighting. The Vrekari had never seen anything like it. These humans fought with a ferocity that defied all logic. They fought with their guns until they were empty, then with their knives, then with their bare hands. One human soldier, his arms too damaged to lift, killed a Vrekari guard by biting through its throat. "What are these creatures?" A young Vrekari guard screamed as he tried to fall back to a defensive position. The answer came from an elderly human woman in civilian clothes. She had somehow gotten aboard one of the assault ships. She carried no weapon except a kitchen knife. She had used it to kill 2 guards already. "We are parents," she said, "and you took our bobbies." She died moments later, shot through the chest by a Vrekari soldier. But her words echoed through the halls of the prison ship, and the Vrekari began to understand that they had made a terrible, terrible mistake. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, every Vrekari on the prison ship was dead. Not one had been allowed to surrender. The humans did not take prisoners. Not today. Not for this. And in the ship's holding cells, 15,000 human children waited for rescue. Some were crying. Some were too traumatized to make a sound, but they were alive. They were all alive. Captain Santos was the first through the door of the main holding area. She was bleeding from a wound on her head and her left arm hung useless at her side, but she kept moving until she saw them. Rows and rows of cages, each containing a human child. The captain, who had not cried when her ship was hit, who had not cried when half her crew died, who had not cried when she thought she would never see Earth again, fell to her knees and wept. "We found them," she whispered into her communicator. "Earth Command, we found them. The children are alive. We are bringing them home." Across the solar system, the message reached Earth, and the world celebrated in a way it had never celebrated before. Strangers hugged in the streets. Enemies embraced. For one beautiful moment, humanity was truly one people, united in joy and relief. But the story was not over, because while the children were safe, the Vrekari Dominion was still out there, and humanity had not finished with them, not by a long way. In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Chen looked at the reports coming in from the rescue fleet. The children were being loaded onto medical ships. They would be home within a week. But Chen was already planning the next phase, because rescuing the children was only the beginning. The Vrekari needed to be taught a lesson that the entire galaxy would remember. "Begin preparations for Operation Judgment," she said quietly. The officers around her nodded. They knew what this meant. The Vrekari had taken human children. Now humanity was going to take everything from them. It was biblical, it was terrible, and it was only just beginning. In the deepest chambers of the Galactic Council, the oldest of the elders stirred from their long sleep. They had not moved in 1,000 years. They had not needed to. The galaxy had been quiet. But now they felt something, a ripple in the fabric of existence, a force being awakened that had not been seen since the earliest days of the universe. "What is happening?" asked one of the elders. Another, older than all the rest, opened eyes that had witnessed the birth of stars. "The humans," it said, "they have awakened something, something ancient, something that sleeps within all species but rarely wakes. The Vrekari have made a grave error. They have provoked a species with children, and they have awakened the most dangerous force in all the universe." "What force?" The elder was silent for a long moment. "Righteous fury," it finally said. "A parent's fury. There is nothing in all creation more terrible or more unstoppable. The Vrekari dominion is doomed, and the galaxy will never forget what happens next." The other elders absorbed this information in silence. They had seen many things in their long existence, but they sensed that they were about to witness something unprecedented. And they were right. The children came home on a Tuesday. Ships landed in every country, returning sons and daughters to waiting families. The reunions were broadcast on every channel, streaming on every device. The entire world watched as parents embraced their children for the first time since the attack. Emma Jenkins, the 8-year-old who loved horses and chocolate ice cream, ran into her great-grandmother's arms in a small Kansas town. Martha held her tight and wept tears of pure joy. "I knew you would come," Emma whispered. "I told the other kids, I said my family would come for me, and you did." Martha could not speak. She just held on to her great-granddaughter as if she would never let go again. Similar scenes played out across the world. The children had been scared, some had been hurt, but they were alive. They were home, and they were loved. But even as families celebrated, the rest of humanity was preparing. Because the children were home, but the war was not over. Operation Judgment was about to begin. And the Vrekari were about to learn why no species in the universe should ever harm a human child. The Galactic Council received its first reports of what the humans were doing 3 days after the children returned to Earth. Ambassador Krell read the intelligence with growing disbelief. The humans were not satisfied with rescuing their children. They were not content to simply strengthen their defenses against future attacks. They were doing something no species had ever attempted before. They were going to war, not just defensive war, not just retaliation, total war. They were going to destroy the Vrekari dominion completely and utterly. "This is impossible," Krell said to his advisors. "The Vrekari control over 200 worlds. They have millions of warriors. The humans cannot possibly defeat them." His senior advisor, an ancient Veloci named Trep, shook his head slowly. "You do not understand, Ambassador. I have studied the humans. I have watched them since they first ventured beyond their own world. They are not like other species. When they are united, when they believe in their cause, they are capable of things that defy all logic and reason. But surely they must see that this war cannot be won." Trep smiled, a rare expression for his species. "Ambassador, let me tell you something about humans. They have a saying, 'The difficult we do immediately, the impossible takes a little longer.' They do not accept that something cannot be done. And when someone hurts their children," he paused, "when someone hurts their children, they do not stop until that threat is eliminated, forever." Krell felt a chill run through his gray skin. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that the Vrekari dominion made a fatal error. Not just a mistake, not just a miscalculation, a fatal error. And now they will pay for it with everything they have. The humans will not rest until the Vrekari are destroyed or until every last human is dead. There is no middle ground, no negotiation, no peace. He paused, his ancient eyes meeting Krell's. The humans have a word for what they are about to do. They call it biblical. I looked up the reference. It refers to a time in their history when they believe a divine force destroyed cities with fire from the sky, drowned armies in the sea, and killed the firstborn children of those who enslaved their ancestors. Krell's blood ran cold. Surely they do not intend. They intend exactly that, Trep said. They are going to rain fire on the Vrekari worlds. They are going to destroy their fleets. They are going to tear down their civilization piece by piece until nothing remains but ash and memory. He leaned forward. And Ambassador, I do not think anyone in the galaxy can stop them. The first phase of Operation Judgment began 1 week after the children returned home. The human fleet, now 3 times larger than it had been during the rescue mission, jumped to the Vrekari outer colonies. They did not come to negotiate. They did not come to threaten. They came to destroy. The colony of Vrekari Prime 7 was the first to fall. It was a mining world, home to 3 million Vrekari workers and their families. The humans gave them 1 hour to evacuate, 1 hour to gather whatever they could carry and flee to their ships. Many of the Vrekari did not believe the warning. They had been told that humans were weak, that they could be easily defeated. They stayed in their homes and waited for their warriors to drive off the human fleet. When the hour was up, the humans unleashed their weapons. Nuclear fire rained down from the sky. Orbital bombardment reduced cities to rubble. In less than a day, Vrekari Prime 7 was a dead world. Nothing lived on its surface. Nothing ever would again. The survivors who had fled carried the news to the rest of the Dominion. The humans were not just raiding. They were not just retaliating. They were exterminating. And they were only getting started. On Earth, the war effort consumed everything. Factories that had made cars now made ships. Laboratories that had researched medicines now designed weapons. Young people who had planned careers as artists and teachers now trained as soldiers. James Okonkwo, the engineer who had created the revolutionary drive system, was now the head of Earth's weapons development program. He worked 20 hours a day, sleeping only when his body simply could not stay awake any longer. "We need to end this quickly," he told General Chen during one of their many meetings. "The longer this war drags on, the more of our people will die. We need something decisive, something that will break the Vrekari completely." Chen nodded. "What do you propose?" Okonkwo hesitated. What he was about to suggest was terrible. It went against everything he had believed in before the attack. But that was before. That was when he still believed in mercy and proportional response. That was before they took the children. "I have been working on a new weapon," he said slowly. "We call it the Genesis device. It does not just destroy, it unmakes. It breaks down matter at the molecular level and prevents it from ever reforming. A world struck by this weapon would not just be dead, it would cease to exist." General Chen was silent for a long moment. "And you can build this?" "I can, but once we use it there is no going back. The galaxy will fear us forever. We will be seen as monsters." Chen thought of the 15,000 children who had been taken. She thought of the terror in their eyes when they were found. She thought of the psychological trauma that many of them would carry for the rest of their lives. "They took our children," she said quietly. "They made us into monsters the moment they did that. Build the weapon." Okonkwo nodded. He had known what her answer would be. Part of him had hoped she would say no, that she would find another way. But another part of him, the part that had watched his niece cry for hours after returning from the Vrekari ship, was glad. The Vrekari were about to learn the true meaning of the word biblical. 3 months into the war, the Vrekari Dominion had lost 47 worlds. Their fleet had been reduced by half. Their warriors were dying by the millions. and still the humans came. The Vrekari High Council met in emergency session on their homeworld of Vrekari Prime. The Grand Chamber, which had witnessed 1,000 years of victories and celebrations, now echoed with the sounds of fear and desperation. "We must negotiate," said one counselor. "We must return the children and pay whatever reparations they demand. This war will destroy us all." "The children have already been returned," another counselor pointed out, "and the humans have shown no interest in negotiation. Every message we send is ignored. Every ambassador we send is returned in pieces." "Then what do you suggest?" The room fell silent. No one had an answer. In all their history, the Vrekari had never faced a situation like this. They had always been the predators, the conquerors, the ones who instilled fear in others. Now they were the prey. Supreme Commander Zereth, the leader of all Vrekari military forces, rose to speak. He was old, scarred from 100 battles, and had never known defeat. "I have studied the humans," he said. "I have watched their tactics. I have analyzed their strategy, and I have reached a conclusion." "What conclusion?" asked the council leader. Zereth's expression was grim. "We cannot defeat them, not in a conventional war, not in any kind of war. They are too motivated, too unified, too determined. Every warrior we kill makes them angrier. Every world they take makes them stronger. They are not fighting for territory or resources. They are fighting for revenge, and revenge has no limit." "Then what do we do?" Zereth was silent for a long moment. "We have only two options. We can continue to fight and be destroyed, or we can surrender completely and hope that they show mercy." "The Vrekari do not surrender," someone shouted from the back of the chamber. "We have never surrendered in our entire history." Zereth turned to face the voice. "Then our history ends here," he said simply, "because I have seen what these humans are capable of. I have seen them fly damaged ships into our cruisers rather than retreat. I have seen them fight hand to hand when their weapons fail. I have seen them die with smiles on their faces because they took one more of us with them." He paused. "They have a word for what drives them. They call it love. Love for their children, love for each other, love for their world. I did not understand this word before. I thought it was a weakness. I was wrong. It is their greatest strength, and it will be our end." The chamber erupted in argument and debate, but Zereth had said what needed to be said. The Vrekari were doomed, and everyone in that room knew it. The only question was how long they would last before the end came. On Earth, the war was changing society in ways no one had expected. The divisions that had defined human history, the differences of nation and race and religion, were fading. People who had never traveled beyond their own cities were now fighting alongside soldiers from the other side of the world. A soldier named Aisha Rahman, who had grown up in a small village in Pakistan, found herself in a unit with a farmer from Nebraska named Tom Wilson. Before the war, they might never have met. Their worlds were too different, their lives too separate. Now they were brothers in arms, fighting side by side against a common enemy. "Why do you think they did it?" Tom asked one night as they waited for the order to board the assault ships. "Why did they take the kids?" Aisha shook her head. "I do not know, I do not care. All I know is that they hurt children. My nephew was taken. He is 8 years old. When we found him, he did not speak for 3 days. 3 days he just sat there, staring at nothing." Tom nodded. His own niece had been among the taken. She was doing better now, but she still woke up screaming some nights. "My grandmother told me something," Aisha continued. "She said that in our faith, there is a special punishment in hell for those who harm children. The fire is hotter. The suffering is worse. She said that what we are doing is just delivering them to that punishment a little early." Tom smiled, though there was no humor in it. "My grandmother said something similar. She said that Jesus loved children and anyone who hurt them would face his wrath. Different faiths, same message." Aisha nodded. Maybe that is why we are winning, she said. Maybe all of our gods are angry. Maybe they are all fighting beside us. Tom looked up at the stars. Maybe, he said, or maybe we are just really, really angry ourselves. The order came to board the ships. Tom and Aisha stood up, checked their weapons, and joined their fellow soldiers. Tomorrow they would be fighting again. Tomorrow more of them would die. But they would keep fighting until the job was done. Because no one hurts human children and gets away with it. No one. The fall of Rekari Prime took 12 days. The humans arrived with a fleet of 2,000 ships, the largest military force in the history of their species. The Rekari defenders fought with desperate courage, knowing that they were defending their homeworld, the heart of their civilization. It did not matter. The humans came through their defenses like water through sand. Ships fell on both sides, hundreds of thousands of lives lost in the cold void of space. But the humans kept coming. Every time the Rekari thought they had won a victory, more human ships appeared. On the surface, the battle was even more intense. Human soldiers landed in waves, fighting through the streets of the Rekari capital city. Every building became a fortress. Every intersection became a killing ground. Captain Santos, who had led the rescue of the children, was there. She had refused to retire despite her injuries. She had refused to stay behind while others fought. I started this, she told anyone who tried to stop her. I am going to finish it. She died on the 7th day of the battle, leading a charge against a Rekari defensive position. Her last words, recorded by her helmet camera, were, "For the children." Her soldiers carried her body back to the human lines. They placed her flag-draped coffin on a transport ship and sent it back to Earth. She would be buried with full honors, the first of many heroes to be remembered. But her death only made the humans fight harder. They had lost so much. They had sacrificed so much. They were not going to stop now. On the 12th day, the last Rekari defenses fell. The human flag was raised over the ruins of the Capitol building. The war was essentially over. The Rekari Dominion, which had terrorized the galaxy for 1,000 years, had been destroyed in less than 6 months. The surrender was signed on a human ship orbiting Rekari Prime. General Chen represented humanity. Supreme Commander Zereth, now the sole surviving member of the Rekari High Council, represented what was left of his people. The terms were simple. The Rekari would be disarmed completely. Their military would be disbanded. Their ships would be destroyed. They would be confined to their homeworld and 3 colony planets, stripped of all their conquests. They would spend the next 100 years paying reparations to every species they had ever harmed. They would hand over all records of their crimes. They would identify every child they had ever taken and provide whatever information they had about what happened to them. And they would never, ever take another child again. If they did, humanity would return. And next time there would be no surrender. There would be no survivors. Zereth signed the document with a trembling hand. He looked older than he had 6 months ago, defeated, broken. "You have destroyed us," he said to Chen. "Our empire, our pride, our future, all gone." Chen's expression did not change. "You took our children," she said simply. "Did you think we would let that pass?" Zereth shook his head. "We did not understand. We thought you were like other species. We thought you would mourn and move on. We did not know that you would. This." He gestured at the ruins of his world, visible through the window. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you fight so hard? Why did you sacrifice so much? Other species have lost children to us. None of them did what you did." Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but filled with something that Zereth could not identify. "Let me tell you something about humans," she said. "We argue about everything: politics, religion, culture, sports. We disagree about almost every topic you can imagine. We fight among ourselves, sometimes badly. We are not a perfect species. We are not even a particularly united one most of the time." She paused. "But there are some things that we all agree on, some lines that no one crosses. Hurting children is one of those lines. When you took those kids, you did something that united every single human being on Earth. You gave us a common enemy. You gave us a common cause. And you gave us a fury that would not rest until justice was done." She leaned forward. "We call it biblical because our oldest stories talk about a God who punished those who harmed the innocent. Fire from heaven, plagues and disasters, the destruction of entire cities. Those stories are thousands of years old, but they still resonate with us, because deep down we believe that there should be consequences for hurting children. Terrible, absolute consequences." Xereth absorbed this in silence. "You are a terrifying species," he said finally. Chen nodded. "Yes," she said, "we know, but we are only terrifying to those who threaten what we love. Everyone else has nothing to fear from us." She stood up and prepared to leave. "Remember this day, Commander. Remember it and pass the story to your descendants. Tell them that there is a species on the outer edge of the galaxy that loves their children more than life itself. Tell them that this species will pay any price, fight any battle, sacrifice anything to protect their young. Tell them that provoking this species was the greatest mistake your people ever made." She walked to the door and paused. "And tell them this. The universe is vast, and there may be other species out there who think about taking human children. If any of them are foolish enough to try, they will meet the same fate as the Vrekari. We will not always be watching, but we will always be ready. And we will never, ever forgive those who harm our bobbies." She left, the door closed behind her. Xereth sat alone in the room, surrounded by the ruins of everything his people had built. He thought about the humans, about their fury and their sacrifice and their love for their children. He thought about what they had done to his species in just 6 months. And for the first time in his long life, Supreme Commander Xereth wept. The Galactic Council met in full session for the first time in centuries. Every species was represented. Every ambassador was present. They had come to discuss the new reality that faced them all. The Vrekari Dominion was gone, destroyed by a species that most of them had never even heard of until a year ago. Ambassador Krell stood before the gathered representatives. He had prepared a lengthy speech, full of diplomatic language and careful analysis. But looking at the faces around him, he realized that they did not need speeches. They needed truth. "Fellow ambassadors," he said, "we have all witnessed something unprecedented. A species that was considered primitive and insignificant has risen up and destroyed one of the most powerful empires in our history. They did this not for conquest or resources or glory. They did this because someone took their children." He paused. "I have studied the humans extensively since these events began. I have spoken with their ambassadors. I have read their history. I have tried to understand them. And I have reached some conclusions that I believe are important for all of us to hear." The chamber was silent. First, the humans are not aggressive by nature. They do not seek to conquer or dominate. They were quite content to remain on their small world at the edge of the galaxy. They only expanded because they were curious about what lay beyond their solar system. Second, the humans are capable of forming alliances and friendships with other species. They are not xenophobic. They actually seem to enjoy meeting new forms of life. Many of our diplomatic contacts have been quite positive. Third, and most importantly, the humans have very clear moral boundaries. They believe strongly in concepts like justice and fairness and protection of the innocent. They will not start conflicts, but they will finish them. They will not attack unprovoked, but they will respond to provocation with overwhelming force. He looked around the chamber. The lesson for all of us is simple. Do not provoke the humans. Do not threaten their homes. And above all, do not harm their children. If you do these things, you will have nothing to fear from them. But if you cross those lines—" He did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the chamber had seen what happened to those who crossed those lines. I recommend that the Galactic Council formally recognize Earth as a sovereign world and offer them full membership. I recommend that we establish diplomatic relations with them based on mutual respect and cooperation. And I recommend that we make it very, very clear to every species in the galaxy that the humans are not to be trifled with. The vote was unanimous. 1 year after the attack, Earth held a memorial ceremony for all those who had died in the war. The event was broadcast across the planet and beyond. General Chen, now retired, stood before a crowd of millions. Behind her were the names of the fallen, etched into a wall of black stone that stretched for miles. Captain Maria Santos, Sergeant Michael Kim, Colonel Victor Petrov, James Okonkwo, who had died 3 months ago when one of his experimental devices exploded, and thousands of others, men and women who had given their lives so that 15,000 children could come home. "We gather today to remember," Chen said, "to remember those who sacrificed everything, to remember why they fought, to remember what we learned about ourselves." She paused. 1 year ago, we were a divided world. Nations argued with nations. Peoples fought against peoples. We thought our differences were important. We thought our conflicts were meaningful. Then something happened that showed us how wrong we were. Our children were taken, and suddenly all those differences meant nothing. We discovered that underneath all our divisions we were one people, one family, one species, and we would do anything, sacrifice anything to protect our young. The war we fought was terrible. The price we paid was enormous. But we also learned something important about ourselves. We learned that we are capable of incredible things when we work together. We learned that our love for our children is the most powerful force in the universe. We learned that there is no enemy we cannot defeat, no challenge we cannot overcome when we stand united. She looked at the names on the wall. These are our heroes. These are the men and women who answered the call when our children needed them. They did not fight for glory or recognition. They fought because they could not stand by while innocents suffered. They fought because that is what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We avenge those who are wronged. We stand between our children and any threat, no matter how powerful. Let their names be remembered forever. Let their sacrifice never be forgotten. And let this wall be a reminder to all who see it. This is what happens when you threaten human children. This is the price we paid. This is the price we were willing to pay. And we would pay it again, 1,000 times over for the same cause. She stepped back from the podium. The crowd was silent. Then slowly, a sound began to rise. It started as a whisper and grew into a roar. Across the planet, billions of voices joined together in a single word. Remember. They were remembering. They would always remember. In a small church in Kansas, Martha Jenkins sat with her great-granddaughter Emma. The little girl was 9 now, a year older and a lifetime wiser than she had been before the attack. "Grandma," Emma said, "why did they take us? The aliens, why did they take us?" Martha was quiet for a moment. How do you explain evil to a child? How do you make sense of something that makes no sense? "Because they did not understand," she finally said. "They did not understand how much we love you. They did not understand what we would do to protect you. But now they know." "Yes, sweetheart, now everyone knows." Emma nodded seriously. "Good," she said. "I do not want any other kids to go through what we went through." Martha hugged her tight. "No other kids will," she said. "The whole galaxy knows now. No one will ever try to hurt human children again." She looked up at the cross on the church wall. For a moment, she thought she saw it glow slightly, but that was probably just her imagination. Or maybe not. Maybe something really was watching over them. Maybe something really had heard their prayers on that terrible day when the children were taken. Maybe there really was a power in the universe that responded to a parent's love. Martha did not know for certain, but she believed, and that was enough. Outside the church, the sun was setting over the Kansas plains. The sky was painted in shades of gold and red and purple. It was beautiful. A year ago, Martha had wondered if she would ever see beauty again. A year ago, she had thought that the world had ended. But the world had not ended. It had changed. Humanity had changed. They had discovered something about themselves that they had forgotten. They had discovered that they were capable of great and terrible things when pushed to their limits. And they had discovered that their love for their children was stronger than any force in the universe. The Galactic Council called the human response biblical. It was an accurate description: fire and fury, wrath and vengeance, the destruction of those who harmed the innocent. But it was also something more. It was love, pure, unconditional, all-consuming love, the kind of love that moves mountains and parts seas and brings empires to their knees. The humans had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and the galaxy would never forget. On distant worlds, alien parents told their children the story of the humans. They told them about the species that loved their young so fiercely that they destroyed an empire to protect them. They told them that this species was not to be feared unless you gave them reason to fear. And in the halls of the Galactic Council, a new rule was added to the charter, a rule that would stand for all eternity. No species shall harm the children of humanity. This law is absolute and without exception. Those who violate it shall face the consequences alone, for no power in the galaxy can protect them from human vengeance. It was the only law in the charter that required no enforcement. No one would ever dare to test it. Because everyone remembered what happened to the Vrekari. Everyone remembered the response that was biblical. And everyone understood the simple truth that the humans had taught them. You do not threaten human children. Ever. In the years that followed, humanity took its place among the stars. They were welcomed into the galactic community, respected and sometimes feared, but always treated with care. They made friends among the other species. They formed alliances and trading partnerships. They shared their art and music and literature with beings who had never experienced such things before. They were not perfect. They still argued among themselves. They still had conflicts and disagreements, but they never forgot the lesson they had learned. United, they were unstoppable. And when it came to their children, they were absolutely, terrifyingly, biblically united. The children who had been taken grew up to become leaders and scientists and artists and teachers. They carried the scars of their experience, but they also carried the knowledge that their species had crossed the stars to bring them home. Emma Jenkins became a diplomat. She spent her life building bridges between humanity and other species, teaching others about her people and learning about theirs. What should other species know about humans? She was once asked at a galactic conference. She smiled. "Love us and we will love you back," she said. "Trade with us and we will trade fairly. Be our friends and we will be the best friends you ever had." Then her smile faded. "But harm our children," she continued, "and we will end you, completely, absolutely, without mercy and without hesitation. This is not a threat. It is simply who we are. We are parents, and there is nothing in the universe more dangerous than a parent protecting their child." The audience was silent. Emma nodded. "Any questions?" There were none, because everyone already understood. And that was the story of how humanity announced itself to the galaxy, not with diplomacy or technology or conquest, but with the oldest and most powerful force in the universe: the love of a parent for a child. Biblical indeed.